Roland Vileplume that we've become so acquainted with, finding himself a Tapu Lele, which finds him an N, and he will be playing that N right after he plays a Forest of Giant Plants. So, I mean, I wouldn't call this an explosive turn quite yet because we don't see any of the the Rowlets and the Oddishes, but it's definitely going to be, has the potential of being a very powerful start.
Yeah, for Gustavo, his deck isn't centered nearly around the speed of John Kettler's list that we saw at the North American International Championships. He only plays the one Shaman, so he's generally going to be taking a slower approach, but not this slow.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a slower approach, but this is about as slow as an approach can become. He has 0 of the basic Pokemon for either of the grass evolutions. He has no Rowlets and no Oddishes in play. You need both. I mean, granted, Forest of Giant Plants will kind of mitigate the damage that your deck does to you in that particular case, but that's you hoping that the Forest of Giant Plants stays in play. That's not a guarantee whatsoever. And now on Jordan Palmer's side of the field, we see him start with a Drampa, and we see a Tapu Lele as well as a Trubbish and Drampa on his bench, so he does have his own desired Pokemon on the bench. But the fact that the Garbodor is prized, and I'm sure that he's just become aware of that right now, is very important. I mean, that means that you no longer have the Garbotoxin, which is really what you use as your first line of defense against Vileplume decks. So now he's going to have to kind of take full advantage of all these little opportunities that Gustavo may give him by having a slow start, because otherwise, once the Vileplume comes into play, that's going to be the end of his items for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, Jordan, he used Tapu Lele, and he looked through his deck with the Wonder Tag, but chose not to take anything. He had a Sycamore in his hand, didn't want to throw away any supporters, just knows how important it is when you're playing against a player who uses Vileplume. We see him using a VS Seeker here for his supporter, the Guzma, which he doesn't want to use, obviously. He's already used his supporter for the turn. But using those item cards now means that you have supporters later. And we see Jordan now is going to be using his Big Wheel GX, giving him 10 cards and putting pressure back over to Gustavo. Gustavo needs to end here in order to stop the Big Wheel from basically getting 11 cards over to Jordan. And as we see, Gustavo now quickly dropping that N and gonna put a damper on all of Jordan's plans with those cards.
Sure, but more importantly for Gustavo, hopefully he's going to start getting his own type of setup going. We know that at the end of this turn, he'll more than likely be using Beacon as his attack, but before he does that, he definitely wants to start getting some Pokemon in play. The fact that the Forest of Giant Plants is still in play is very crucial for him, and we see a Dartrix in his hand. We might be seeing a Rowlet as well.
Yeah, multiple Dartrix in his hand, and this is a problem that Decidueye decks have sometimes. They just draw the cards in the wrong order. He's starting to find all of the Dartrix when clearly he'd want Rowlets here. Now he's using Beacon and has to grab the Rowlets and hope that the Forest of Giant Plants stays in play so that he can continue and get these evolutions out on the following turn.
And beyond that, he also has to hope that his opponent doesn't play an N himself. And those are, I mean, you're kind of reaching if you really believe that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for your opponent to just not play anything.
Yeah, opponents like to play Tapu Lele GX and use Wonder Tag a lot.
Yeah,
and that's a one way that you can find yourself an N and basically put a lock on any Beacon shenanigans.
Well, here's an Ultra Ball. Will he be finding the Tapu Lele? It seems likely that he will.
Yeah, he's going to take a quick look through his deck here. Tapu Lele is going to be his target choice. Decided to throw away a Psychic Energy here. This probably is indicative of either him using the Rainbow Energy now to set up for using Berserk on turn 3, or he's just going to go aggressive and try to find that double colorless, really put some pressure on knocking out this Vulpix here.
And he does find the N with his Wonder Tag, and N does get played, so all of the cards get shuffled right back into Gustavo Wada's hand, which, again, would have been very important for Gustavo because he had double Rowlet, double Dartrix in his hand. All he was waiting for was a turn to be able to do so, to play them down. And now Jordan's going to find himself 6 additional cards. He finds the double colorless energy. Matter of fact, he finds a couple of them, and that's really big for him, as now he's going to stop the Alolan Vulpix from being able to Beacon again. Yes, it's a lot of energy in play on the Drampa against a Tapu Lele, which already has a double colorless attached to it. but you're less worried about that, and you're more worried about not letting your opponent set up.
Yeah, not only did the risk pay off, but he has Rainbow Energies in his deck. That means if this Choice Band sticks, Tapu Lele is also threatened to be knocked out here. So Gustavo's got to be feeling the pressure, and you can see it in his play. He's playing pretty fast. Sycamore's right here trying to find something so that he can start to stabilize, but this Drampa is ready to go.
You're absolutely right about that. We finally see an Oddish, and we finally see a Rowlet, as well as an Alolan Vulpix still on the bench. But, I mean, at this point, all you have is a Tapu Lele and a few basics. You definitely need to see a Vileplume sometime soon. The Vileplume deck needs to get a Vileplume out as soon as possible in order for you to really stop your opponent from mounting any type of meaningful offense. The moment that they have this much of a board set up already, it's just so much more difficult for you to be able to keep up with their offense because, I mean, think about it right now. If you're Gustavo, let's say you finally get your Decidueye like you're about to here, and let's say you do get your Vileplume in play, you still have to face down this Drampa, which you were not going to be knocking out this turn, and then you potentially have to face down another Drampa, which he's definitely going to start building up on the following turn. It's just very difficult to do. And remember, you are playing down your items, so your opponent's Garbodor is slowly starting to rack up its damage with its Trash Launch as well.
Big risk here too. Gustavo is using the Feather Arrow, and he put the damage onto a Trubbish. He just activated Berserk.
Oh my goodness, he really did. That's absolutely true.
This means that now Jordan, some pressure's off of him. He doesn't have to go find a Rainbow Energy. He can actually just play this double colorless onto his Drampa and continue to get some Berserkers, Drampa ready to go. And that's a lot of pressure that he can put on here.
Yeah, I can't quite explain that. But, I mean, I guess he assumed that the Vulpix would be the target anyways. But if at some point we see a Guzma from Jordan, we're gonna be seeing some really bad news for Gustavo, as he inflicted the damage himself. But instead, Jordan does play a Sycamore, so he kind of gets bailed out in that case. Because if we had seen a Guzma for that Tapu Lele, then I mean that would have been a 3-prize lead here for Jordan, and more importantly, no energies in play for Gustavo.
Yep. Meanwhile, Jordan's still in really good spot here. He's been able to use all of his Via Seekers, no Vileplume in play, and he's been taking full advantage of that. His hand is set up very well. He's got options for next turn with the Guzma play, so if the Tapu Lele does not get promoted here, he can maybe go and grab that in the coming turns. And he's also got cards like the Sycamore and some energies. So he's got plenty of choices in his hand. This means that Gustavo definitely needs to start eyeing down an N if he has the opportunity.
Gustavo just falling pretty far behind here. 2 Vulpix have been knocked out, and we still have that Drampa on the active position with a Choice Band and 3 energies attached to it, as well as a Drampa with a double colorless attached to it on the bench, just in case. That's just so much pressure that you have to face down once your opponent also has damage on his bench like Jordan does. It's just, granted, it's a difficult spot for Gustavo to be in, right? Like, he wants to start knocking out these Trubbish as soon as possible, stops the end game onslaught of the Trash Lanches. But at the same time, you're kind of just making your opponent that much stronger too. It's just it's a double-edged sword here for Gustavo, and he really hasn't been able to answer the way he'd normally like to.
Yeah, I think he was worried about the Garbotoxin Garbodor. He wanted to make sure that he could clear that off if it was a threat. He doesn't have the information that we have that Jordan actually did prize the Garbotoxin Garbodor. So Gustavo took a little bit of a risk with his Feather Arrow, and we could see Jordan paying off big dividends here in the coming turns for that.
No, I mean, that's a great point. And I'm sure that's what Gustavo was thinking. But ultimately, it just did not work out for him.
Gustavo now, he's just going to be content with 100 damage here onto the Drampa. Oh, he's going to Feather Arrow first here.
Right, first Feather Arrow. And keep in mind, we still do not see a Vileplume.
Yeah, this looks like an opportunity for him to Hollow Hunt.
Yeah, but it does seem like he does play the Vileplume before Hollow Hunting, which is very key, as from this point on, Jordan's out of items.
And three pretty great cards over here for Gustavo. He's got the Acerola and the N and a Guzma as well.
I wonder how many items he has in his discard pile. Hopefully we get information on that.
But here we go. The Guzma is going to be able to grab the Tapu Lele, the only real attacker Gustavo has built right now, and 2 prizes because it's a GX Pokemon. Drampa is going to be set up and ready to go for that. Berserk doing 180 damage and taking 2 more prize cards for Jordan, now with only 2 remaining.
It came a turn later than we anticipated it to, but it still happened, and it's still strong as Guzma ends up dealing 2 prizes worth of damage to Gustavo here, and Jordan is left with only 2 prizes remaining before he takes this first game in this 5th round.
Yeah, Gustavo here definitely needs to find a double colorless energy if he wants to stay in this game. Has to start with getting some damage output. Unfortunately for him, it looks like he has a grass energy, and Feather Arrows is going to be his main source of damage here. Meaning Acerola is going to have to come in handy with all the damage output that Jordan has coming. And yeah, Jordan, even though he was just end right here, it doesn't really matter what he has. His board is able to continue to keep him in the match here. Using the Drampa, he's able to get 180 damage down onto the Decidueye. And now Gustavo's turn here. He's looking at using a Guzman, just trying to buy some more time. He's even got Dartrix's attack to start sniping a little extra damage if he wants to as well with the Sharp Beak Quill or something along those lines.
You're
Sharp
just adding
Blade
words.
Quill, there it is.
Okay, well, you had 2 of the 3 words correct. Congratulations. It seemed like you were just tossing random words together and hoping they worked. But yeah, you're right. Sharp Blade Quill is
Yeah, pretend
powerful.
you knew that.
What do you mean pretend?
Of course.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
But hey, it's putting in work here. We see Gustavo, he was able to lock up Jordan.
So he got to play the Acerola then.
Yeah, he was able to pick up the Decidueye, and this game's been moving
I
fairly
thought he
quickly.
Guzma'd. My mistake. So he did Guzma. No? So I thought he Guzma'd, and then he tried to play Acerola? Am I wrong?
I don't know how many turns have passed in that spot, honestly. Yeah, we might be... I think we're just going to make sure that we've got the right game state here.
Okay, well...
Yes, okay.
Okay, good.
These turns have been flying, honestly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Ever since Jordan got ended, too, he hasn't had anything but attack, draw and attack.
Let's see. So now a Sycamore. Decidueye does hit the field, so that's 2 Decidueyes in play.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that is big
Yeah.
news here for Gustavo, as he now takes 2 very crucial prizes against Jordan. Most importantly, knocking out one of the Drampas, the most heavily built up Drampa here. And that's big here for Gustavo, as now he's also knocking out the Garbodor at the end of his turn. So he's down to 3 prizes opposed to Jordan's 2. But, I mean, Jordan's still dealing a lot of damage with Berserk.
Yeah, Jordan now, he's just forced to try to remove the double colorless energy and
All he had was Righteous Edge.
try to stop some of this damage. He's drawn into a lot of bad cards, but this is what happens when you're playing against a Vileplume deck. He's just left with Pokemon and items, and he hasn't been able to get any big attack rolling for him.
A crucial Acerola here for Gustavo.
Yep, replaying down the Decidueye. He's going to be able to use Feather Arrow again if he so chooses.
And he does. He uses it twice more. So now Drampa is at 60. You see how these feather arrows, they may not be very intimidating on their own, but you add enough of them together, and these arrows really start dealing some damage.
Yeah, and now Gustavo's back to his plan of, I'm going to continue to put some damage on you, and if you ever do too much damage to me where I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to Acerola and just come right back.
Right, a little Sky Return action puts 30 more damage on this Drampa, but that
hey.
forces an Acerola of Jordan's own.
Yeah, Jordan, he's going to start doing it for himself here, and this is one way for him to clean up his board on his side, and he's really looking for a combination of cards. I believe if he's able to find himself an energy and a Guzma over the next few turns, maybe he can start to get something going. But Gustavo's done a great job of cleaning up his side of the board. A lot of his targets are going to be really high hit points, and didn't leave any Tapu Lele or Shaman around.
So I kind of like this play by Jordan, but there is a weakness to it, and that's that Gustavo's going to be knocking out this Garbodor, which means that Drampa is no longer going to have any extra damage for the Berserk. So that's the one. That's the one weakness of Jordan's play here, is he will not be dealing extra damage with Berserk unless he attaches a Rainbow Energy to a bench Pokemon, but then he won't be able to use Berserk at all. So, very difficult for Jordan to kind of escape from this, right? Like, it's just, it's just rough. Like, he had to attack, so he had to use the Garbodor,
yeah.
But using that Garbodor put him in a position where now Berserk doesn't deal enough damage.
Yeah, he's kind of delaying the inevitable here. We see that Gustavo was able to turn the tides with that big end play, and Jordan just not finding anything. And now that he's removing the energies, yes, it's providing some help in slowing down what's happening, but Feather Arrows are going to be enough to close this game out.
Yeah, it seems like Jordan put up a good fight, but at the end of the day, once your opponent has a Vileplume in play, you're gonna struggle to get the right setup going. And all Jordan can really muster up is a retreat by the Drampa, promotes the Tapu Lele and passes the turn, which now leaves Gustavo with just triple Feather Arrows. I mean, at this point, all Gustavo really needs to do is just Feather Arrow a couple more turns, maybe one or two more turns, and that's the end of the game.
Yeah, we won't see any Acerola here to save Jordan, so we are going to see him scoop up this game here, still with a relatively pretty good amount of time here to play 2 more games. So that is one benefit of how this game played out. But Gustavo, I mean, man, he was almost counted out there at just the way that was playing out. And Jordan just drew into, I mean, if we look back at that was maybe 6 or 7 turns of just whiffs off of that after that end.
These guys played faster than we could talk, and we can talk pretty fast.
I thought so. I used to think so.
But we've met our match. These guys know how to play very, very, very quickly, and I mean, we see how there was more turns in that game than you normally see in a game, and they still ended with over 32 minutes remaining in the game. So Gustavo Wada does take a very, I guess, he didn't take it easily, but he definitely, once he took advantage of the game, it was his to lose, and he just never gave it up.
Yeah, we see this a lot with Decidueye. You have to sacrifice a little in the early game. Generally, that Alolan Vulpix is going to fall, but he lost a lot really early. The Tapu Lele falling was pretty surprising for him. He wasn't expecting to lose all of those prize cards so early, but was able to stabilize with the help of that N and following Acerolas.
And this is kind of a common matchup, at least it has been for the last few months. And I expect for both of them to be pretty well versed in how this matchup is supposed to play out. So I definitely wasn't surprised by the speed of play. We see a Rowlet, a Decidueye, and a Tapu Lele for Gustavo here. And Jordan, on the other hand, has a couple of Trubbish and a couple of Choice Bands with the double colorless. I mean, that's a series of just bad cards for you to have prize there.
Yep. Jordan is going to be starting off with that Magearna promo. It's a card that he's included in his deck, likely to counteract all of the Gardevoir that he may have been expecting. I don't see it being too impactful here, but just for anyone wondering at home, what is that?
Yeah, that Magearna is powerful when it hits for weakness, but otherwise it's just so difficult to really get maximum damage out of its prismatic wave.
Yep. Jordan starting with the ideal start, the Bridget coming down, grabbing him 3 Pokemon. Those basics are going to be definitely helpful for him here. Also has an energy in hand along with a Floatstone too, so he's going to be set up to do that turn 2 pressure that we're now getting used to seeing out of Jordan.
Now Jordan, I mean, he has a great hand. He has about as good a hand as you can hope for with this Drampa Garbodor deck. It's just it's a very poor starter for him, so he needs to find himself a Floatstone as soon as possible.
I love seeing him using the Ultra Ball here. He knows that turn 1 Vileplume is a likely play from Gustavo. That's something that they aim to do when you're a Decidueye Vileplume player. So he's going to grab a Tapu Lele here, not expecting him to play it. He would save this so that next turn he can find himself a supporter which isn't focused around those item cards like the Ultra Ball would have had to in the next turn. Gustavo now starting up his turn, looking at a lot of Pokemon in his hand. He's got 2 Decidueye, a Gloom, and all of this looks bad unless you have Force of Giant Plants.
Yeah. Forest the Giant Plant's always the key card when it comes to a turn 1 for the Vileplume player, or pretty much for any grass player. And sure enough, it likes to make an appearance on the first turn, and it did not disappoint in this particular game.
Yeah, unfortunately, he has no Ultra Ball or any other way to search out Pokemon, so he's stuck. he's gonna have to sacrifice this Oddish and then let the Alolan Vulpix search out a Tapu Lele if he wants to find anything that isn't off the top of his deck. So a little unfortunate for Gustavo, just being left with some Ultra Balls. We don't have Jirachi EX anymore, so he wasn't able to find anything too useful.
And also keep in mind that this time around, the Garbodor is not prized here for Jordan, so he has to fight through that too. And he's giving Jordan that much more time to find it easily. Yeah. And that's going to be an issue for Gustavo as well.
Yeah, we see that Jordan got to play the Floatstone onto the Trubbish, so he's just one step away. It's also a good preliminary play to do. You put down the Floatstone before any potential Vileplume shenanigans so that you can lock it out with just the Garbodor, since you don't have access to items until it's locked out. And even was able to find another Floatstone to move the Magearna out of the active spot, but
that
no energy card. So we might just see Big Wheel.
Yeah, I mean, Big Wheel is an attack that you don't see every game, but when you do see it, it's usually because it's about to save your butt.
Yep, and when your opponent just goes Decidueye Pass, that means that they probably don't have an N. So when you're going to get 10 free cards and you don't think your opponent can stop you from being able to have access to those, you do it.
Oh, absolutely. But now it's on Gustavo. Does he have the top deck that he needs here in this particular situation? We're going to find out after Jordan draws his 10 cards. Let's see what Gustavo draws. It needs to be something important. It's an N.
Oh, my goodness.
It needed to be that exact card, and sure enough.
Wow. Yeah, you can't write that. That is fantastic for Gustavo. He needed that. You can see it on his face. Just a look of relief, like, whew, okay, we're still in this.
That's the look that you think that he's giving? It felt more like, yeah, I do this all the time.
We'll have to ask him.
It's just another par. Just par for the course.
He is able to find himself an energy, so now the Alolan Vulpix is coming into the active spot, which means that Beacon's going to be available for him. He does have a few interesting cards in his hands, but nothing like a Vileplume, so going to search that out along with a Tapu Lele to make sure he has the right supporter next turn.
Tapu Lele and the Vileplume are the cards that got beaconed out, but Jordan now, I mean, even though his opponent did get very lucky to find the end, that doesn't mean that Jordan's at a disadvantage. Jordan actually still has a very great field, and he can keep growing it at this point by getting more energy onto his side of the field. Unfortunately for him, though, he does still have the issue of having a Magearna and a couple of Tapu Leles in play.
Yeah, and this hand, he did not find any supporter. He has a couple items and an energy, the Tapu Lele in his hand also, so he'd need bench space to clear up to really get anything going, but he does have 2 double colorless energy in his hand, which means that he does have some pretty reasonable attacks lined up for him in the coming turns.
All right, Gustavo now finding an N with his Tapu Lele, places the double colorless energy onto his Tapu Lele before playing the N, and also decides to Feather Arrow right now.
Yeah, also using the Vileplume now before he gets to N and see 6 cards, that means that he may draw into some items that he's not able to use, but when you're playing against a Trashalench Garbodor deck, maybe you don't want to use those items anyways.
Exactly. It seems like he might have a very low number of items in his discard pile right now.
Oh,
hopefully we get
you can see Jordan's hand. He just drew into some rainbows and a supporter card, so that's
perfect
exactly
cards,
what you want.
The perfect cards here for Jordan, as Gustavo does pass the turn, but Jordan shows the bad news to Gustavo as he plays his rainbow energy. And it plays a Guzma as well. That's another crucial card here, as now the Tapu Lele will not even get to attack. It's just going to go down with its double colorless energy. And there goes 2 prizes for Jordan. He now has 3 prizes remaining opposed to Gustavo's 6. We've seen this before, but this time around, Jordan's field is even stronger.
Yeah, this feels familiar.
Gustavo's.
This is definitely pretty close to what was going on in the last game, but Jordan's, as you were saying, Jordan's board looks much better. He has the Floatstone onto a Trubbish, so that means that Garbotoxin could come into play for him. And Gustavo now is going to be using that Hollow Hunt? Or?
Yeah, all he could do was Hollow Hunt this turn.
Yeah.
He had just another quick turn like we're becoming used to saying here. But this time around, Jordan's turns are just going to be that much stronger. This time, it's not a tale of both people just having weak turns. It's just one guy. This time, it being Gustavo having a very weak turn, and Jordan just taking advantage of that. Yep. Gustavo gets 6 cards off of Jordan's end here, and Jordan's only going to be able to draw 3, but not as relevant once Jordan's got a Garbodor on the bench with a Choice Band attached to it and a Rainbow, as well as a Drampa dealing heavy damage with its Berserk attack.
Yeah, Jordan did not find anything very useful for himself.
It's going to be 180 onto this Decidueye. He didn't really need anything useful. That's the crazy part.
Oh,
wow.
Sometimes you just have a Decidueye line in your hand, and he has the Acerola.
Yeah, that's about as good as that turn's going to get here for Gustavo, as that end just gave him everything he needed. Acerola played. All of these cards go back into Jordan's hand, and because of Force Giant Plants, Gustavo's going to be able to play them right back down, and then that's it. Gustavo passes the turn after getting a couple more Feather Arrows, but now you're starting to see how the tides are starting to turn in Gustavo's favor. But will Jordan be able to stop that from happening?
Yeah, one more Acerola would be huge here. It would be able to give Gustavo the 3 Feather Arrows that he wants, but
doesn't look like he's going to have it, though. This time around, all he can do is play a Sycamore, draw himself 7 new cards, which means this Decidueye will be going down during Jordan's following turn.
Yeah, Gustavo's not able to find anything too relevant in this Sycamore here. Does have a double colorless energy to get his Decidueye ready to start attacking afterwards, but not left with much. He's even benching an Oddish here, and probably just gonna, he's gonna sit behind it, just say, hey, you can have an Oddish, but please don't take out my Decidueye. I need these Feather Arrows.
And he does Feather Arrow to pass his turn, but does Jordan have the Guzma? Guzma would be critical in this case.
Yeah, just
see a few items in his hand, but items are not what he wants to see.
Just Team Flare Grunt, some
also
items, and a Tapu Koko. So he's just going to take his prize and hope that Acerola doesn't come down soon.
And he is forced to just take a prize. So Jordan Palmer now down to 2 prizes, but Acerola can definitely play a key role in this game here for Gustavo if he can draw into it. Gustavo goes down to 4 prizes as the Drampa does get knocked out. Man, these guys play fast and furious.
Yeah, they sure do. And we see Gustavo now, he brings up the Vileplume. This helps in 2 different ways. One, he has the option to use Guzma and be able to switch to something that's a relevant attacker, and also it's a 1 prize Pokemon, so he can hide behind his Vileplume while these Feather Arrows come down into play. If he ever wants to get out of the active spot, you just Guzma or you Acerola. He's got the Acerola here to pick up his Decidueye, take 180 damage off of the board, and give him another Feather Arrow.
That's exactly what did happen here, and that's all thanks to Tapu Lele, which gets rewarded with a Grass Energy for its troubles.
There you go, pal. Good work.
Kind of like a rare candy in a sense.
Jordan finds a VS Seeker. It's so tempting. You see it, you go, that doesn't work.
Well, either way, the Magearna, which has been in place since the very first turn of the game, does retreat here, and Garbodor comes up, and now we finally get to see how much damage Garbodor can deal, and it looks like the answer is 80 damage.
Yeah, that means we have 4 items in Gustavo's discard pile. It's not terribly relevant for Decidueye, but
Guzma, are we seeing the comeback again here from Gustavo?
Yeah, this looks like Gustavo could continue to just apply pressure to that back to Tapu Lele that has all the energies and kind of just try to buy turns. If ever Jordan gets an energy, make him retreat with it. He just drew a Choice Band.
Choice Band, not what you want to be drawing here if you're Jordan. Remember, he does have access to his Garbodor, he just can't find it.
He has to pass.
Passes the turn. All he can do is just hope that his opponent doesn't have too much else going for him. But that's 2 more Feather Arrows right here. And he passes the turn back, and now a rescue Jeez, man. Rescue stretcher.
Yeah, Jordan, he's just stuck. He has to continue to pass.
Again. Oh, Gustavo now. You can see it in him. He definitely feels like he's got this swinging heavily in his favor now as the Tapu Lele on the bench does get knocked out finally from these feather arrows. That's just through abilities, by the way. That's not a single attack here by Gustavo. And now Gustavo plays his Tapu Lele again, this time finding himself another Acerola. Plays the Acerola so he can bring back the Vileplume to his hand. So now he can play items before he brings the Vileplume back down.
Yeah, this
Sure
gives
enough,
him access
finds
to
a
the
level
level ball. And that means he has another Decidueye, as he does have the rest of the pieces in his hands also.
He actually, did he pass the turn? No, he didn't. Okay. So he plays the Dartrix and the Decidueye. So now he's going to have a third Feather Arrow available to him. And it looks like it goes towards the Garbodor on the bench. And finally, he passes the turn, does Gustavo.
Hey.
Jordan finds a Sycamore as timely as ever.
Yeah, he needed this a few turns ago, but he'll take it now. He's eyeing up if he should play the Trubbish first, but probably don't need it. Just try to find something to get going here. You need energies.
Maybe you do need it, though. Because this Garbodor could go down, and you want to save one Trubbish for the other Garbodor. I don't know. Either way, it seems like he is just discarding his entire hand. Decides to Sycamore away his entire hand here, but remember, he won't be able to retreat without attaching an energy to the active Tapu Lele, which is exactly what he does, and he deals 60 damage onto the opponent's Tapu Lele. And now Gustavo closing in on a victory here. All he has to do is take 2 more prizes. He has a Tapu Lele in, from Jordan here that he can start arrowing with his feathers, but beyond that, he needs to start dealing some damage himself. Remember, Jordan is down to 2 prizes remaining, so he needs to be very careful here. I would expect to see this Tapu Lele retreat.
Yeah, Gustavo's in a weird spot. Playing that Acerola meant that he doesn't have a way to clear this damage off the board, so he's actually just going to get rid of his entire hand. He had a few options with Guzma, but the fact that these float stones are already on the board means that he doesn't really want to target those down and try to stall for any time. Instead, he's just going to try to find some answers in his deck, and it looks like he's found Decidueye, and he's just going to hope that this Tapu Lele on the bench can't get targeted, because that's the only real threat that's left.
How much do you play around Acerola here? Looks like he's just debating on how many Feather Arrows to deal to the Tapu Lele. He's going with just a single one.
Are there enough items in the discard pile of Gustavo to have Guzma in the game?
I wish I knew. I really wish I knew. I know that at the end of, he had 8, then he added a level ball, so he's got 100 damage that he can deal, at least. Potentially more, but at least 100 damage.
Oh, we see, it looks like Jordan doesn't have the option.
You know what, though? It was 80 to the Vileplume. So because of Choice Band, he would be able to knock out the Tapu Lele.
Yeah, well,
but either way, no. All he can do is Sycamore.
Yeah, not able to find anything too big. He does finally find Garbotoxin Garbodor, but...
So that's got to be it, right? Because the Tapu Lele cannot... I mean, it can't escape the Feather Arrows.
Yeah, there's... now that Garbotoxin is locked in, he is preventing the Feather Arrows.
Sure. That's true. He did find the Garbotoxin Garbodor.
That just means we're one Field Blower away, one Guzma potentially if he has any energy cards to go with it.
I don't see a Field Blower in the hand here for Gustavo, though. But still, I mean, you're absolutely right that there are plenty of cards that can end this game here in Gustavo's favor. It looks like we're going to be seeing some Righteous Edging here from Grandpa. Getting rid of that double colorless energy. Yeah. Does he find, looks like an Acerola?
Yeah, this is where having some damage on Vileplume, he could have picked that up at a different time.
If he plays the Acerola, he can get rid of the damage on the Tapu Lele, though, which is very nice.
Yeah.
Makes it much more difficult for Jordan to get his final couple prizes.
But his hand, he does not have much going on. He's eyeing up Ultra Ball now. His Vileplume is turned off due to the Garbotoxin Garbodor, so he does have access to these item cards if he wants to.
It really would have been so much worse if he hadn't drawn that Acerola, though. That Acerola was a very crucial pickup here for Gustavo.
Gustavo's looking at his deck. Does not have much in there. Yeah, chooses not to pick anything. He does have one double colorless left in his deck, so that is one way to continue getting some attacks off, but even Espeon is coming down with an energy here.
All right, versus Seeker. Will that be enough? We find a Tapu Lele. It looks like Jordan assumes it's enough.
Yep, grabbing Guzma, and there must be enough items in there because that's a knockout.
Well, we did see a couple more items go into the discard pile at the end of Gustavo's turn, so it definitely was a knockout. And Jordan steals this second game, even though it was very back and forth. Jordan definitely had the advantage at the beginning of the game, but the mid and late game definitely belonged to Gustavo. But I guess at the end of the day, it only matters that Jordan was the last one to pick up a couple of prizes at the end.
Yeah, the fact that Jordan was able to draw into the Garbotox and Garbodor really saved him here. He needed to find that when he used that Sycamore because he really had no way to stop what Gustavo was doing. Not only did Gustavo have a lock on all of the item cards, but Feather Arrows were destroying his board. He was getting so much damage dealt to him that he just had no answers available. Jordan luckily was able to find that Garbotox and Garbodor and was able to come back in the match. It's interesting that Gustavo wasn't able to put a little more pressure on the Trubbish with the Floatstone because that was really Jordan's only way to come back.
These have been some great games between these two players, and they still have 13 minutes and 45 seconds remaining in this match, so it's not unrealistic to see them finish this entire match here. And I really hope they do because I think that a draw would just be very unfortunate for both of these players who have been playing at a very, very good pace.
Yeah, we've seen both these players playing quickly and playing pretty well too, so definitely want to see this game conclude with a win.
Alolan Vulpix versus Trubbish to start things off, and sure enough, force the Giant Plants. It feels like it's just married to the starting hand from
every
Gustavo.
time. Every time. Not when it's me. When it's me, I gotta look for that thing. But
man,
no.
You have no idea how many times I've sycamored for force the Giant Plants and just passed. More times than I care to remember. Tapu Lele here finds an end. That's after an Ultra Ball, so that's at least one item in the discard pile here for Gustavo right away.
Yep. Gustavo able to reset his hand. Once again, not able to find any Rowlet or Oddish in these openers, which is pretty peculiar. He just hasn't found them, but we are seeing some now here and Level Ball, it looks like, as well. So much better hand for him. I'd say if he could pick some cards to go into his hand, he probably would have picked all of those. Those are really good.
All right, that Level Ball finds him an Oddish, but as we see here, the die does represent two items in the discard pile for Gustavo. One more with that Ultra Ball, so that first turn always brings down a few item cards from the Vileplume player, and this is no exception. But we may very well see the first turn one Vileplume of the match, and we sure as do as Vileplume hits the field before Jordan can even have a single turn.
And that's big. He didn't even have to go and grab Shaman and try to search for more cards. Just says, I've got a Sycamore in my hand, and my deck is used to this. Your deck is not. You need item cards in order to continue and do what you do best, especially Floatstone. So if I can stop that on the first turn, I think I'm in a fairly good spot.
If anything's going to make you slow down, it's going to be a turn one Vileplume, as now you have to figure out what your exact best route to victory is here, and it looks like he's going for a Bridget, which is going to find him a couple of Trubbish and probably a Drampa, maybe a couple of Drampas and a Trubbish.
Yep, looking at both of those Trubbish and the Drampa, and he's going to need to find some way to put some pressure on. He's got double colorless energies in his hand. Just one there. So he can continue with his opening Drampa like he likes to do, and probably just going to have to pass the turn. This is going to be a much slower game for him, and that's not what Jordan's used to. He's used to taking knockouts early and often.
But at the same time, the advantage is that Gustavo will also theoretically have a much slower start himself, since he won't have access to items either. We'll have to wait and see if that ends up being true, though, as Beacon is used one more time, or for the first time this game, and that's going to find him a Dartrix and a Tapu Lele.
Yeah, this is the exact game that Gustavo wants to play. Maybe not with 10 minutes on the clock. Maybe he'd feel more comfortable with like 15 or 20. But this is, if the game's pace keeps up, this is exactly how he wants it to go. He can really just drop Feather Arrows and start to place damage wherever he wants. while he watches his opponent struggle. He's not going to have any access to item cards.
And we
we'll
see how
passing.
We see how there's literally just an energy attached to a brand new Drampa and a pass. And now we see our first Decidueye of the game here on this third turn here for Gustavo. And it adds 20 damage to the double colorless energied Drampa. And that's the end of Gustavo's turn right after a beacon, finding another Dartrix and another Decidueye. So that's going to be 2 Decidueye, unless we see an end here from Jordan, which we clearly do. Right away, Jordan playing that in, hoping that his opponent does not get a second Decidueye out of this deal. But more importantly, he's really trying to knock out this Vulpix. He wants to stop the beacons from happening, because if you get enough beacons out, that's going to be triple Decidueye, and that's just impossible to beat.
Yeah, that's right. Gustavo's going to be content just using Feather Arrows this entire game. He's going to make Jordan have to retreat to this Trubbish, which has a 2 retreat cost, which could be unfortunate for him. Yeah, we're probably going to see the double colorless energy do that right now.
Well, there is that double colorless energy bringing up that Drampa with only a single psychic energy, which means there's going to be pressure for him to find another double colorless energy, which will be one of his third or fourth one. And that's going to be the end of the turn here for Jordan after he does decide to use his Big Wheel GX attack.
Yep, 10 cards going into the hand of Jordan, and he's really going to hope that Gustavo does not have access to an N here. When you don't have any of items available to you, this means that you need to see more cards in your deck if you're going to find what you need. Generally, those item cards are going to be what get you there. They give you extra damage, search for your Pokemon, or what have you. So now he needs to see more cards in order to keep up in a game.
Now, because we never got to see the item go onto the Trubbish, I mean, because Jordan never even had a turn to be able to pull that off, there is no fear of a Garbodor using its Garbotoxin, which is just very important for Gustavo. It gives him that much more freedom to kind of secure his position here. And sure enough, that's what Gustavo's doing. Just decides to beacon again. Very fast turns here from Gustavo. He knows he doesn't need to. He doesn't need to do too much here. He doesn't need to overthink his turns. Just advance your position and beacon. And rinse and repeat until your opponent can finally knock out the Vulpix, which will be on this turn as we see a double colorless energy come onto this Drampa because of the Big Wheel.
Yeah, he was actually able to find his 3rd and 4th double colorless energy due to the Big Wheel. So having all these cards in his hand is definitely going to be helpful for him. He's got damage from Feather Arrows on the back Drampa, so Berserk is activated.
Whoa.
And Tapu Lele is going to try to answer this Drampa here.
It's going to be 160 damage onto this Drampa.
Yeah, and Feather Arrow
With Feather Arrow, that's going to be a knockout.
Going to clean that up.
Well, you rarely see a Tapu Lele deal that much damage nowadays, but when you do, it's still a treat.
Yeah, and this is great news for Gustavo. Not only is he going to be able to take the knockout here, but he's leaving his opponent with only 1 double colorless energy, which means that a Tapu Lele answering back to his Tapu Lele seems unlikely. It still wouldn't be a knockout, but it would be a lot of damage.
Yeah, it's just so much more difficult for Jordan to kind of come back from this, as you just don't have the kind of damage output you're used to seeing. You don't have access to choice bands. You don't have access to your opponent getting more items in their discard pile since they're not going to play them. It's a difficult situation for Jordan. He's used to dealing so much more damage in this game, and he just can't.
Yeah, he has access to teammates, which is going to get him 2 of any card that he needs. I just don't think that 2 cards is going to be able to do it.
There's nothing you can do to be able to get a knockout against the Tapu Lele right now. I cannot see it happening. 2 seconds later.
Bang. Yeah, if he played Hex Maniac...
Team Flare Grunt's great.
That would be one way to slow this down. You'd be able to turn off the Vileplume, play down the Floatstone, and then use your Garbotoxin ability in the coming turns, but I don't think he has that in his deck available to him.
No, he does not play Hex Maniac in his deck. That's one of the things I looked for, but did not find it. But Team Flare Grunt, though, really doing some pretty decent work.
Yep, and Gustavo, he's got his eye on the prize. He's just going to start putting damage counters on GX Pokemon and just count to 3. If he can get 3 of them down, he wins the game.
That seems like the wrong Pokemon for Jordan to have left up in the active position, unfortunately for him.
Yeah, he's just stuck with Garbodor, and trying to find some answers here. He's got the teammates, but there's not much left that can help him out here.
I'm just struggling to find an answer for Jordan. So the thing is, Jordan, the reason the first couple of games were so close were because Jordan got off to such a heavy lead. Jordan was the one who was at 2 prizes and his opponent was at 5, for example. Something along those lines. It's a much different story when it's Gustavo that gets ahead, because Gustavo's the one that has the better mid to late game.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's Jordan the one that needs to kind of like fight to get the last couple of prizes. So for Jordan to be this far behind is just, it's not a situation you want to be in if you're the Garbodor or Drampa deck against Vileplume.
Yeah, that's just the power of turn 1 Vileplume. He was able to stop everything that Jordan does with his aggression. So much of it is centered around the use of item cards.
And we see how a Trash Lynch is all he can muster up, which is only 60 damage. Honestly, Gustavo just had such a good start that he didn't need the use of extra items like we're used to seeing.
Gustavo now is going to put...
The world is Gustavo's oyster right now.
He's got double colorless energy that they put on the Decidueye. He has Guzma as well. Probably trying to play around Acerola here. Maybe gonna space out these attacks, taking out a Trubbish and putting some damage counters onto another Trubbish could work for him. But instead, he's gonna use N here and try to limit Jordan's potential having of the Acerola. If he doesn't have it, he can't use it. So he sees teammates come down, and it's likely that Jordan's going to hold on to a card like that because it's so big when Gustavo's playing this slow, methodical approach of just put damage everywhere and eventually clean you off.
All right, looks like Gustavo's taking a look at Jordan's discard pile. There's still 3.5 minutes remaining, and I think that's going to be enough for Gustavo to finish this match off, or this game off. Goes down to a single prize. Jordan still has 5 remaining. Draws his card for the turn. Draws a Rainbow Energy.
Oh, he found the double colorless. That's the last one he had in his deck.
That was the final double colorless in his deck, so he will be able to get a return knockout onto this Tapu Lele on that Gustavo's been using to attack for the last couple of turns, but that doesn't seem like it's enough. Gustavo, though, will be going down to a single card, and that's about as good as good a turn as Jordan can hope for. Finds the double colors and has the end to bring Gustavo down to a single card in hand. However, he still has to face down this Decidueye that has 3 energy on it, and he has another Decidueye with the obviously the ability to use Feather Arrow if he so chooses, and where he so chooses.
Yeah, Gustavo also has access to Hollow Hunt, so if he draws completely dead off of this N, then he doesn't have to worry. He could just get himself the cards. He can also just continue to attack into the Tapu Lele, but then it gets risky with an Acerola play.
All right, so that is a knockout onto the Tapu Lele for Gustavo. 2 minutes remaining, and Jordan's down to 3 prizes now. It may be a photo finish, depending on what Gustavo drew.
Yeah, Gustavo's going to try to plan out the best way here to clean up the game.
20 on a bench Trubbish and 20 on the active Tapu Lele, and then he just chooses to attack, uses his Razor Leaf to deal maximum damage onto this Tapu Lele, putting it at 40 damage remaining, which means just 2 Feather Arrows will be enough to knock it out.
Yeah, those 2 Feather Arrows would be able to win him the game. He also, by spacing out the damage, is able to get himself a play of his own, where if Jordan Acerola'd the Tapu Lele, well, we don't need to go into that. Game's over.
All right, Jordan does extend the hand as he realizes that the game is over. There is nothing he can do. It was checkmate in Gustavo Wada's favor as Gustavo Wada takes the match 2 games to